When I first got into flying, it was every day I'd look out the window, or at school I'd be looking at, oh look, the wind's blowing, oh I can't wait till school's over so I can go fly my kites, right? And nowadays, I rarely fly kites except at festivals. So when I'm building a new kite and have a prototype, I'll build that prototype up, I'll take it out to the field, I'll fly it, and within minutes I can tell if it's going to work or not and what needs to change. I'll go home, I'll make those modifications and change it. I'll go test fly it again to make sure it flies. And once it flies, I'm ready to build the real kite and start that process. When I first got into kite flying was in the late 80s. And kiting was getting popular again, mainly because of sport kites. People were able to fly these maneuverable dual-line kites and do figures and stuff. So there was a resurgence in kiting in the early 90s, and that's when I kind of got into it. I attended a festival in Reno and drove all that way just to fly my stunt kite out in a pasture. And I thought, oh, this is kind of crazy because there's all these art kites and all these kite makers here. And I was just blown away by what they were doing. And I was like, I've got a little bit of talent with some drawing. I want to make my own kites. Instead of buying kites from other people, this is what I want to do. And so I went back. I remember in the car driving back to Salt Lake, and I'm just doodling, and starting to draw things that could turn into kites. I went to a friend's house, and he showed me his technique, the applique or the cutaway technique. And so the early 90s was just kind of a boom time for kiting. Lots of manufacturers, lots of people experimenting with kites and shapes. There's a festival circuit. Long Beach, Washington is the biggest one. It's an international kite festival. It lasts an entire week. There's so much in the sky, and you'll see something and then you'll turn and there's something new. And then all of a sudden another kite goes up and you're like, wow, check this out, look at this, look at this. One of the things that I would do at Long Beach was take pictures and photographs of everybody's kites, all these unique handmade kites, and then put them into a poster. So I hand drew a poster and I drew the people flying them as little characters. So it was a festival on paper of what I remember, what it looked like. I would sell those posters in order to pay for my trip the next year for the festival. Another way that I paid my way to these festivals was to sell miniature kites. I learned building kites from Mr. Miniature, Charlie Sodich. Took his techniques and started making my own little miniatures, and I would make several hundred of those up and then take those to the festival. I had a friend that had a booth there, and she allowed me to sell those kites there, and then that paid my way to the festival. As time went on, I started creating my own style of kites, and I was getting some recognition for that. There was other festival goers there that said, hey, this guy Scott's making some pretty cool stuff. And so that would lead to invitations to other festivals. And one of the things that happens at these festivals is we have what's called a camp, where you'll decorate a space. And I happen to decorate my space with, of course, stuff that's recognizable as mine, banners and these birds and fish. People can walk in it and interact with it. I call them a wind garden, so there's movement. It's a backdrop for photos. They've been used for weddings. I do like making the accessories for the kites that are up in the air. These are accessories that are on the ground. So here in the US, we don't have a traditional kite culture that goes back hundreds of years like they do in Japan or India. But we have our own little culture. We have kite making retreats where we teach other people our techniques. So I teach my painting techniques, or I'll teach my style or design. Other people will teach how to build their specific kites. And so this is this culture that has grown. We have a common bond, and that's just to play, to have fun, and to put stuff up in the air and put on a show. And that's what it's all about. I've been to England and France and Italy, Qatar, Taiwan, Australia, Japan, to see these other kites from other makers from these areas is just amazing. Our festivals are all about flying all day long. In Japan, what was interesting is the community gets together to build these kites. That's a big social event, and they do very little flying. They do more partying and more socializing. Each community builds their own kite and they fly it for a few minutes, and then it's over with. And so that was kind of a shock for me. I expected to see flying all day long, and it really wasn't. It was more of a social event. The Japanese kites, of course, each region or prefecture has its own style of kite. Here in the US, rokaku is the style that we are most familiar with, or an Edo kite. An Edo kite is just a very large rectangle that has lots and lots of bridles, lots and lots of strings on it that creates that shape that it needs. And materials, they use bamboo and paper. It's traditional. It's been happening for, I don't know, hundreds of years. The kite makers are dying off now. The traditional kite makers, they just aren't doing it anymore. No new apprentices are coming up. So they're starting to lose that part of their culture. Another country that has a rich kite flying culture is in India. They fly fighter kites and they have flat rooftops. And so what they do is they get up on their rooftops and everybody around is flying fighter kites. And little kids, moms, dads, everybody's flying fighter kites. And the object of the flying is to cut the other kites out of the sky so that you're the last kite flying. And so they purposely are maneuvering their kites, because they can control them, to slice the line of the other kites. And they use a glass powdered impregnated line called manja. One of the disadvantages to manja is that it can cut. It can cut your hands, but if a kite gets cut in the sky, it drifts off. If there's a line going across the road or something, and somebody's riding a motorbike or bicycle or something, they might not see that line, and it can cut them and cause some severe injuries. Kiting's taken me all over the world, introduced me to new cultures, new art that I haven't seen before, making new friends, and I'll incorporate some of those things into my new designs.